At last. Welcome, viewer. As you no doubt have guessed, I am the Duelist. Please, come, sit. I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up. Ironically, this is not far from the truth. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it in every game that you've played of Forged Alliance Forever, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you here to this video. Do you know what I'm talking about? And no, of course it's not the Matrix. It's actually trees and reclaim on maps. I don't know why I just kind of got into a Matrix vibe here, but today we are going to be looking at trees and reclaim as they exist on maps. How important are they? What is the reclaim tool? Not telling you how much reclaim is really on the map and just how deep does this rabbit hole really go. So first off, let's set the stage. Reclaim, obviously, super important. One of the first things you should do if you have either never played a map or maybe haven't played it in a long time and need a refresher is to check the reclaim. You can do this in the vanilla game. You don't need any mods by holding Control and Shift. Now, where it is and how much there is very important. This allows you to concentrate your engineer or commander efforts for that critical early reclaim to help you get initial production up and some early mechs upgrades. Now, there is a great mod that can help you with this. Actually, there are several that while researching this video, I stumbled upon. The one that I use is Advanced Reclaim Info, but there are several others that are out there by various developers. All of them have a different kind of flavor. Some of them combine different mods, but the one that I use is Advanced Reclaim Info. And this is honestly a process that you should be repeating throughout the game. As Rex accumulates and you're able to recycle mass in these Rex to make more units, upgrade to a new tech level, build an experimental, bolster your economy, etc. The world is your oyster. But what if I told you that the Reclaim Info mod is lying to you? What if I told you that there were tens of thousands of mass worth of reclaim that you might be leaving on the table? I'm going to present you with two options here, dear viewer. You can click off this video and stay in Wonderland, or you can keep watching and I'll show you just how far the rabbit hole goes. So as we journey down this rabbit hole, you've done all the right stuff. You loaded into a game, you hit Control Shift, identified critical reclaim spots. You've either loaded engineers on a transport or sent them out on foot to grab it, but you missed the trees. Now, any budding capitalist knows that trees are, of course, the enemy, and these trees contain boatloads of reclaim that is being left on the table by the Advanced Reclaim Calculation tool. And oftentimes in a lot of maps, trees are often overlooked. So for today, we're going to be looking at three maps: Settons, Twin Rivers, and Selkie Isle. All three maps fit a couple criteria. A, they're popular. B, they have a lot of trees. And C, there is a huge delta between what the Reclaim Info mod shows you and how much reclaim is actually there on the map. Now, as far as what I did for this, I had dozens of engineers pretty much pick these maps clean or close to clean of every single tree and other reclaim source. So I included wrecks and rocks and things like that that would show up in the reclaim calculator. Then I manually added up all of the engineers' reclaim totals to compare against what Advanced Reclaim Info is telling us what's on the map. So how I did this, there is a new tool that has come out in the most recent update. It's a little icon that whenever you select an engineer, there's a little green circle thing that tells you how much mass and a little yellow one that tells you how much energy each of these units has actually reclaimed. So through a very long and painstaking process, I added up all of the reclaim of the dozens of engineers that I had from these various on these various maps, and I'm comparing it against what advanced reclaim info is telling me that the amount of reclaim is on the map. So let's start comparing some numbers. Settings, the basic version here, I'm not using the FAF version or adaptive or anything like that. It's just the basic vanilla version, which is, I believe, the most commonly played one, but I'm not a Settings player. I just looked at a lot of replays, and that seemed to be the most common one, so that's what I'm going with. But this shows 15,318 reclaim via advanced reclaim info. But whenever I add up all of the engineers' reclaim stats, we get more like 55,000 reclaim across the map, with almost 40,000 being found in the trees. Twin Rivers is similar. Advanced reclaim info shows about 10,000, but the tally for the engineers is more in the ballpark of 25. And the biggest delta comes now with Selkie Isle, with the mod showing about 37,000 in reclaim, with the actual amount being closer to 145,000 reclaim on the map. Now, if 145,000 is just a number to you, that's almost 3/4 of a salvation. That's on the map just in terms of reclaim, and over 100,000 of it is in the trees. Now, these are some big mass numbers that you're leaving on the table if you're not focusing on reclaiming trees and you're only leaning on one tool to actually tell you your reclaim amounts. And I don't mean this to disparage the mod. It's an incredibly useful mod. My hat's off to the creators, but there is a limitation to it when the engine can't be brought lower than 10 mass for a singular reclaim amount. This makes sense because it might crash the game to display all the trees as individual reclaim amounts, because each of these, I believe, are worth like 1, with some of them being worth slightly more. I think tree groups are worth like 5. So I understand why it was built this way, but there's a lot of reclaim out there and we need to get it. So let's talk about the best ways to actually get these trees. Now, there are 2 primary ways to do this. There are 3 primary ways to do this. Sorry, miswrote my script. And they scale in terms of effectiveness, but they also scale in terms of actions per minute cost. Now, the first way is patrolling. Patrolling engineers costs the lowest amount of actions per minute. Engineers will continuously monitor an area for reclaim and automatically scoop it up with only a couple of commands. If your mass pool is full, the engineer will skip the wreck and then come back to it later next time it comes around on its patrol route, assuming that you need mass at that point in time. Now, the downside for this one is that the range of the engineers is slightly reduced, so it won't reach as many wrecks as if you use the other methods, and you're going to need more engineers and tighter patrol routes. Now, the second way is attack move. This is done through selecting an engineer or multiple engineers. You hold Alt and then you right click somewhere, ideally with wrecks around between the engineers and wherever you're clicking. And the engineers will travel in sort of a line and reclaim the wrecks. There is a lot of grace as far as like the actual line. It's pretty, the engineers are pretty liberal as far as discovering things that might be outside of that actual line. Same is true with patrol, but not quite as exacerbated. Now, the upside of this tactic is that you get increased range from the patrol option, and it isn't hugely APM intensive, but the downside is that when engineers get to the end of their route, they need to be retasked. Now, another downside of this is that if your mass storage is full, these engineers will just travel to the end of their attack move order and then stop moving. So they won't loop back like they do on a patrol order and pick it up if you need it in the future. Now, this is a good happy medium as far as effective range and APM cost. This is the one that I use most commonly. Now, the last one is attack moving engineers from a factory. This can be accomplished by having a factory produce engineers, selecting that factory, then holding Alt and right clicking towards an area with a lot of reclaims. So going through those steps again, take a factory, produce engineers on repeat, hold Alt, right click towards an area with a lot of reclaim. Now, as the engineers approach that rally point that you have set, or that attack move rally point, they will stop and then start reclaiming everything around them with a huge amount of range. This also increases the speed of the engineers' reclaim because they aren't moving and tripping over each other either. So huge increase to range. I mean, it's got to be like 3-4x. I haven't actually measured it, but it's gigantic, and I've got a clip up on the screen that should show you guys that. But it also means that engineers aren't moving and pathfinding into each other, and that every engineer is reclaiming within a circular area around them really, really quickly. Now, the downside here is that there is a limit to the range, so it's not infinite. And it's normally best to have one or a couple of factories continuously producing engineers to avoid getting tanks or other units mixed in with your reclaim forces. So have a factory or a couple dedicated to building engineers, and then you got your other factories like your Navy factories, air factories, or additional land factories doing their own thing. The other downside is you also need to move the rally point when the reclaim is exhausted. You can set a new reclaim. You can set a new reclaim point during production though. So if you, let's say for example, if you have 5 engineers already out reclaiming, you can select that factory, hold Alt, right click on a new area. The first 5 engineers will continue to reclaim in their original area. They won't move, but the new engineers will go to the new area. So again, a way that you can kind of help this out a little bit. This method takes a little bit more care and feeding, but vastly increases your reclaim amounts. It's just personally hard for me to keep track of a lot of the time. So I really only use this. I do use this on Selkie Isle, and the minuscule amount of times that I play Settons, I try and use this one as well. So this is definitely a good tactic as far as getting the most reclaim the fastest, but it does take a little bit more attention. So hopefully y'all enjoyed this video. I was really curious what that icon was for engineers, so I tracked down what it was in the release notes this morning actually, and I felt really inspired to create a video. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.